Now, Ukraine says that its troops are facing extremely fierce fighting as the Russian forces are closing in on the strategic eastern city of Pokrovsk. It's also called for unconventional decisions to bolster Ukrainian defenses. And our next story gets you the state of affairs on the battlefield and also the impact of Russian victories that could have on any negotiations with Kiev.
The fierce Russian onslaught is intensifying with each passing day. It has brought Russian forces just 1.5 kilometer or less than a mile from the key Ukrainian road and rail hub, Pokrovsk. The advance marks the fastest pace of Russian invasion since 2022, giving Russia control over a large chunk of Ukraine. In the eastern Ukrainian region of Donetsk, Russia currently controls over 60% of the territory. The control of Pokrovsk allows Moscow to disrupt Ukrainian supply lines along the eastern front. It also further boosts its campaign to capture the city of Chasiv Yar that sits on higher ground, offering potential control of a wider area. Russian and Western officials call this potentially the most dangerous phase of Moscow's advance, as Ukraine fires US-made ATACMS missiles into Russia. NATO countries bordering Russia, like Estonia, are watching the developments with increasing concern, pinning their hopes on global intervention to secure peace.
Estonia is a neighboring country of Ukraine. We have been supportive for Ukraine, like 3.4% of our GDP. But also we understood that Russia will commit this aggression already years ago, and Russia will remain an aggressive country. But Estonia is the member of NATO, member of European Union. We have US, British, French troops on the ground ready to act. So I think that Russia has no plans to attack us directly. But we have witnessed different hybrid attacks and cyber attacks 24/7 from Russia. So we know that Russia is a very aggressive country. Estonians and as well Ukrainians, we want to have a just and long-lasting peace there. But I don't see that Putin has changed the goal. And let's hope that we will have this peace.
Russian sources claim that Kremlin's forces have captured over 100 square kilometers in the past week and nearly 250 square kilometers altogether in November. Analysts say that Kremlin is racing to secure as many territorial gains as possible before US President-elect Donald Trump takes office next month. It would allow Kremlin to push for peace talks with terms that are likely to be shaped by each side's status on the battlefield. Russia is expected to occupy another 300 square kilometers of Ukrainian land by the end of the year. Pokrovsk, with a pre-war population of about 60,000, sits on a key road linking several cities that form a defensive arc protecting that part of Donetsk. Euro Report, WION, World is One.
All right, now to give us more perspective in terms of what is happening at this moment in the Ukrainian war theatre, we are joined this broadcast by Mr. Ben Aris, who is a founder and also the editor-in-chief of the BNE Intel News and also a former Moscow bureau chief for the Daily Telegraph. He's joining us live on this broadcast. Now, Mr. Aris, let me in fact start off by asking you this. You know, the reports that are coming in from the ground in Ukraine, they clearly indicate that Russia is still gaining territory, despite the fact that the Americans have sanctioned the use of long-range missiles to strike targets inside the Russian territory. In your assessment, does the Biden administration in its final days have any kind of a coherent strategy as to how it intends to proceed further with the Ukraine war?
I don't think so. I mean, what they've done is they've rushed in at the last minute. Biden's, of course, about to leave in January. A lot of weapons, arms, long-range missiles was new, but the long-range missiles in themselves are not helping on the front line in Donbass. I mean, that's a sort of infantry on infantry action that's going on there, and the Russians have surged huge resources in terms of men, artillery. As you know, you reported, that North Koreans have also been sent to relieve the operations in Kursk and free up more men. The reason Assad was just ousted was they took all of the Russian forces in Syria and brought them to Ukraine. So they're throwing everything they have at this. The long-range missiles that Ukraine has are very useful for hitting supply dumps and infrastructure and logistics behind the line, but they don't help in the front line. And I think to put this in context, I mean, what we're seeing is, like, for most of the last year, and the year before, there's been a stalemate and nobody's made any territorial gains. I mean, the gains we've been measured in a few kilometers. And in just the last month, the Russians have made more territorial gains than they've made at any time since the start of the war in 2022. So you can phrase this, I think it's a bit strong to say the Ukrainian defense is collapsing, but they certainly have huge problems with a shortage of manpower, a shortage of money, and a shortage of materiel. And that's finally starting to tell. The Russians are making very fast gains. I mean, they've taken back hundreds of kilometers of territory, and now they're poised to capture Pokrovsk. Pokrovsk is a key city in the Ukrainian defense. It's a major logistical hub. Supplies the whole of the Donbass Ukrainian front line. And if that goes, then the Ukrainians have a big problem. It's a huge strategic defeat.
Indeed. Now, and also, considering that there is going to be a change of guard at the White House, Donald Trump, the president-elect, has said that he would like to have a negotiated settlement for the Ukraine war. Now, with that being the writing on the wall for Volodymyr Zelensky, if he continues to keep on fighting this war, with each passing day, he ends up losing more territory to the Russians, who then would turn around and say that, listen, the territory that we have captured is non-negotiable, and any negotiation is done will be done for what happens further in the course of this war. So the longer this war goes on, Ukraine could end up losing more territory. Is this something that is playing in the mind of Volodymyr Zelensky?
Absolutely. I'm sure it's keeping him up at night. I mean, there was a deal done in the first 3 weeks of the war in April 2022 in Istanbul, which was immeasurably better than the deal that they're facing now. And I think everybody, including the White House, not that people want to say it out loud, is realized that there's going to be major territorial concessions in the inevitable ceasefire talks. And given that, the Ukrainian defense looks like it's collapsing, it's just a question of when these talks will start. And of course, Trump, although it's been very confusing, there's been umpteen plans coming out of the States amongst his various advisors. But it seems absolutely clear the first thing Trump will do is insist on some sort of talks. And those talks cannot proceed. I mean, Putin's made it absolutely crystal clear that he's not prepared to give up any of the territory. I mean, there was a leaked report from the Kremlin about 2 weeks ago saying that there's a little bit of wiggle room around Kherson, there's a little bit of wiggle room around Kharkiv, and the 4 territories they annex but don't control. But nevertheless, the land bridge will remain. Crimea is off the table. They're going to keep most of the Donbass, Lugansk and Donetsk. And it's going to be up to Zelensky to see what he can salvage. I think at the end of the day, they're going to ask for a ceasefire because they're losing, and then they're going to have to concede that all of these territories are lost, but they will insist they're in disputes, and it remains to be seen whether the Kremlin will accept that.
Indeed. Thank you very much indeed, Mr. Ben Aris, for joining us and getting us that perspective there. For all the latest news, download the WION app and subscribe to our YouTube channel.